Well, it's Thursday, somewhere around 7 p.m. all over the Eastern time zone, and that means it's time for live860 so that all people know. A weekly live streaming podcast from Church 860, a Calvary Chapel affiliate located in Westerville, Ohio. You can find us on the web at church860.com and on Facebook at Church 860. I'm your host, Rob Chandler, and joining me in the studio each week is Pastor Khris Rogers, who will guide and teach us through our discussion of the Bible, chapter by chapter and verse by verse. How's the week gone?
All in all, pretty good. I'm feeling good. I'm pretty excited for episode 7. It's the number of completion, and I'm not saying that we're going to be done, but it feels good to be here. So, how are you?
I'm a little worn.
Yeah?
I'm a little worn. Yeah, I've been very busy with a lot of different things, a couple different businesses, doing some things at the church, and catching up on some home projects, and that's hard on a fat man. So, but
I feel that pain.
Yeah. So there may have been a nap or two involved, but
nice.
But yeah, I'm doing okay.
Well, right on.
So as we do most weeks, we do a little bit of recap. So if you watched us last week, you'll know that Gideon kind of steps into his own. He gets this confirmation that he's been looking for from God. He gathers the troops. God winnows them all down and sends everybody home except for 300. And then they take up their pitchers, they take up their trumpets, and
woohoo! The bottom broke out.
Hey, there we go. Mine didn't break, but
no shrapnel.
Yeah. Nobody lost an eyeball. If you watched this last week, you'll understand all that. If not, go back and watch the episode and give it a read.
The sword of the Lord and of Gideon.
That's right. So, and from there, just all chaos breaks loose. They didn't even have to pull the pins on their barley grenades.
Right.
So the camp, the Midianite camp, just goes into complete bedlam and pretty much destroys each other. Those that didn't get destroyed take off running to the hills.
Right.
And that's kind of where we left off.
Yep, middle of chapter 7 of the book of Judges. We would love to have you join along and read along. So if you have your Bibles, you can grab them, turn to Judges chapter 7. We're going to pick it up in verse 23. We finished the story of Gideon tonight, 3 sessions or 3 episodes on this man. Remember that God called him a mighty man of valor. And we kind of see him coming into that now as really the fruition of his ministry is where these 300 men create this chaos, and then the Lord uses that to wipe out the Midian army. And so as now those that are remaining start on the run, it said in verse 23, and the men of Israel gathered together from Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh and pursued the Midianites. So now that they're on the lam and trying to, those that are left or on the run, those 22,000 that went home scared are ready to fight. You know?
It's always easier to jump on a bandwagon once you know there's certain victory and you're not going to lose.
Oh, the hard work's done? Okay.
That's right. Let's get to it.
We call that blister, right?
Right.
The what shows up after the work is done.
That's right.
So 24 says, then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and seize from them the watering places as far as Bethbara and the Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered together and seized the watering places as far as Bethbara and the Jordan.
I can't help but think this is kind of a classic example of turnabout being fair play, where the Midianites for 7 years had been coming in, swooping in, and taking all the crops that the Israelites were trying to raise. Anything that they did get lucky enough to glean before they took them, they'd steal. And so now the coin kind of gets flipped, and the Israelites swoop in and take control of the water.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, during this time, fresh, clean water is not real easy to come by.
Right.
And so there'd be actual wars over water rights. So the fact that they control these wells now, they control this fresh, clean water that's essential for life. If they wanted to, they could have just simply waited for the Midianites to leave and try and find water, or die of thirst and drought. But now they do what God kind of had called them to do that they didn't do when they entered into Canaan, which is drive them out.
Drive them out, right.
And so, now they take further action, and I guess better late than never. But,
the Ephraimites jump on board and they, do that. They are faithful to what Gideon called them to do. Now they own or control the water, which is, you're right, that's power in that day. So verse 25 says, and they captured 2 princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb. They killed, what mom name?
Sup, Zeb?
What's up, Zeb? How's it going, Oreb? They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, which was convenient that they found the rock that had his name on it.
I wonder if it was anywhere close to the palm of Deborah.
It could very well have been. So the chances are, I'm guessing that this wasn't called the rock of Oreb until they killed Oreb on that rock. And Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb, once again probably where they got the name from. They pursued Midian and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of the Jordan. So just to make sure we all understand, this isn't a lack of faith or unbelief on Gideon's part. The work began with 300. They winnowed it down to those 300. But now Gideon is asking other people to get involved. Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, and now Ephraim are all joining in the fight. The work that began with 300 still continues in what God wants them to do, having the Midianites on the run. So that finishes chapter 7, and we'll read chapter 8 tonight as well. It says in verse 1, now the men of Ephraim said to him, why have you done this to us by not calling us when you went to fight with the Midianites? And they reprimanded him sharply. So now they're getting in Gideon's face. And he said to them, what have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? God has delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. And what was I able to do in comparison with you? Well, then their anger toward him subsided when he said that. So just to kind of recap, Ephraim, the half tribe of Joseph. Ephraim and Manasseh were the sons of Joseph. Ephraim was not invited into the initial fight. That's not one of the calls that went out by Gideon. They weren't part of the initial invitation. Back in chapter 6, verse 35, it said, and he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who also gathered behind him. He also sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they came up to meet him. So no invitation was sent to Ephraim. And so Ephraim's kind of calling him on the carpet now to say, well, why not? And I would venture to guess that they were not upset that they didn't get to fight. They were upset that they didn't get part of the glory. They didn't partake in the victory. They wanted that piece of the glory. We want to be sung about. We want to have a song sung about the tribe of Ephraim. They wanted that recognition.
For the older viewers, it's the Marsha, Marsha, Marsha.
Yeah. Yep. Jealousy. I think jealousy is a dangerous thing, and it will sometimes hinder what the Lord wants to do through us, and something that we need to be on guard on, and that's certainly what is happening with Ephraim here. But I love the way Gideon responds. It's wisdom here. Proverbs chapter 15, Solomon said, a soft answer turns away wrath, and that's exactly what Gideon does. He recognizes that they want recognition. They want props, and so he gives it to them. Well, you guys caught the princes. You got the leadership of this army. Well done. You got the the upper people, and so the best part of it is what he told them worked, and they're like, oh yeah. Yeah, we did. We caught the princes. And so, we feel pretty good about ourselves. And so Gideon's like, phew, that battle's over.
Yeah.
So Gideon came to cross the Jordan, it says in verse 4. He and the 300 men who were with him crossed over, exhausted, but still in pursuit. And we don't know how much time has transpired since they broke the pitchers and blew the trumpets. I mean, that was in the middle of the night.
Right.
Somewhere between like 10 and 12 is usually when that watch changes. And so have they been pursuing all night? Is it now into the day? It would seem they've worked a long time. And when you're chasing after people, I mean, it's exhausting work, right? Lost my place. He says they were exhausted, but still in pursuit. And as I read that, I was just like, you know what? That's like the definition of ministry right there.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted, but still in pursuit. Work to the point that you're just tired and worn out, but then keep pursuing God, keep chasing after him, keep running after the things that he wants for you. And it reminded me, we've been teaching through 1 Corinthians on Sunday morning. We're in 2 Corinthians now, but when we were in in chapter 4, verse 12, Paul said, and we labor working with our own hands, being reviled, we bless, being persecuted, we endure. That word labor there in 1 Corinthians 4:12 is, it's Strong's G 2872, ka'o, which means to labor with wearisome effort. It's working yourself to the point of exhaustion.
No cakewalk. It's not a desk job.
Right. Yeah. Spurgeon, because I love quoting the Prince of Preachers. If you, dear brethren and sisters, will give yourself wholly to God's work, although you will never get tired of it, you will often get tired in it.
Yes.
I just thought that's such a perfect definition. When we face burnout in ministry, and it happens, Michelle and I went through our first sabbatical last year. Right. And really up to that point, we had gotten to the point where it's like, is this what people call burnout? But I think when...
Your sabbatical wore me out.
I would imagine. But burnout happens when you try to do the Lord's work in your own strength.
Right.
And so what I came to realize through that time was that the Lord's work needs to be done in the Lord's strength. And Lisa, our producer, was very encouraging in that time to say, hey, just steep in the Lord and soak him in and walk in that. So what Spurgeon says there, although you will never get tired of the work, you will often get tired in it. Right. And there is a difference there. So
right. And even Jesus took the time.
Oh, yeah.
And stepped back and spent the time with his Father, away from the regular day in, day out ministry, even away from his inner circle to refresh. Yeah. And even though he was God incarnate, he was still all human, and the human body and mind wears down and needs that refreshing.
And
if he needs it, we do too.
And he demonstrated to us that, a nap is sometimes the most holy thing that we can do.
Right.
And so naps are a good thing. And Spurgeon goes on to say, if a man has never tired himself with working for God, I should think he never has done any work that was worth doing. We want to, like Paul, labor to the point of exhaustion. He goes on to say, let us also serve the Lord when every movement is painful, when even to think is wearisome. These men were faint. You know what it is for a soldier to be faint? It is no nonsense, no pretense. It is real fainting, Spurgeon says. Yet to go running on when you are ready to faint, to keep right on when you are ready to drop, this is very trying work. Yet let us do it, brethren, by God's grace. And if anybody needs to hear that word tonight, let me encourage you. If you're weary, if you're tired, it's okay. Keep laboring on, keep pressing on, but not in your own strength. Let the Lord provide that strength for you. All right, continuing on, verse 5 says, Then he said to the men of Succoth, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are exhausted, and I am pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, kings of Midian. And the leaders of Succoth said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? So Gideon said to them, For this cause, when the Lord has delivered Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. He's a little upset, it seems.
Yeah.
Probably rightfully so. And then verse 8 says, just to continue the story, Then he went up from there to Penuel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Succoth had answered. So no bread for you. So he also spoke to the men of Penuel, saying, When I come back in peace, I will tear down this tower.
You know, these guys, they're really, whenever is it a good idea to get in somebody's face and say no when they're tired, they're hungry,
Right.
they've defeated thousands,
Right.
tens of thousands with 300.
Yeah.
You know, you don't, even if somebody hasn't defeated that many people, if they're tired and hungry and cranky and get in my face, I don't get back in theirs. It's not going to end well for me.
Right. You just did what with what? And okay, yeah. Here's all, raid the fridge, do whatever you got to do.
Right.
And it's not like Gideon was asking them to join in the battle, right?
No, just give us something to eat.
Support the fight, join us in that way. But they came up with an excuse not to help. And it's just like, frustrating. It's kind of sad when the Lord leads you into a work. It's often that it's your friends, your family members who are the detractors, and they're the naysayers, and they're the ones that aren't willing to jump in to help with the work. But if that happens, and there's been times in my life it's happened.
Yeah.
Right now I have wonderful support of my family and friends, and I'm grateful for that. But we can't let that distract us from what God would have us do.
Right.
We need to press on.
Yeah, it is very discouraging.
Yeah.
But it's important in those times to remember that your specific calling, my specific calling, was placed in one heart. And just like when the angel of the Lord called Gideon, he called him alone to lead.
Yeah.
And he promised him that God would be his strength and his shield. And Gideon's job was simply to show up and let God gather the helpers.
Right.
And then it's only 300 at that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've learned the hard way through many years of ministry that I'd rather have a handful of enthusiastic people gathered behind me by God than an army of willing helpers that are whiners and grumblers. I remember when my family started the retreat center up in Coshocton County. My dad was a baby Christian at the time, got saved at 67 or 68 years old, and gave everything to start this, and talked with the manager of an established camp. And the guy gave him fantastic advice. He said, remember, this is your calling. Do not expect anybody to do anything, even when they say they will, because then you will get upset, you will be angry, and you will minister from a place of frustration.
Wow. Yeah,
he said, rely on nobody but God.
Yeah.
So wise.
Yeah, no, and even when you have people join your team, like we have a wonderful group in our leadership at church. I've come to realize that while I can cast vision and share my burden for what I feel like the Lord would have me do through Church 860, it's never, the fire is never as strong
Right.
as what's been put in my heart. It's my responsibility to carry that and to shoulder that and to say, if other people want to come along, that's fantastic.
Right.
But
Right.
that's a really good word.
And sometimes that fire can catch and burn brighter amongst a group of people, but don't expect it and don't get upset if it doesn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So Gideon's upset though at the moment.
Yes, he is.
Probably understandably so.
Right.
He's hungry, and hangry probably.
Needs a Snickers, at least.
Yeah. So got tired of eating the barley grenades.
That's right.
So he says, when I come back, and I love that because that's a statement of faith. He's like, I am coming back.
Yeah.
I'm not going out there to die. I'm coming back with the championship belt, around my waist, and Gideon didn't doubt for 1 second who the victor was going to be. He knew, and so this really is Gideon in his prime. Mm-hmm. He has become the mighty man of valor that God said he would be back in chapter 6, verse 12. His faith was in full effect, and he's like, you know what? When I'm done here, I'm coming back here, and then putting the whooping on.
Yeah.
So. Spurgeon says, I'll quote him again, some men have said that this showed resentment and harshness, but when a man is at war, he is not in the habit of sprinkling his adversaries with rose water. War is in itself so great an evil that there are many other evils necessarily connected with it. It seems to me that when Gideon was trying to deliver his own countrymen, they scoffed at him and refused him bread for his soldiers in the day of their hunger, they deserved to be punished with great severity. And we want to support what the Lord's doing, even from afar. If we see that what God is doing, then we want to be ready to help and hold what those resources God gives us with our open hands. All right, so continuing on, verse 10 says, now Zebah and Zalmunna were at Karkor, which I think is a moon of Endor, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
So the Ewoks, they don't live on Karkor, but
they've colonized it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's where Zebah and Zalmunna were at the moment. And their armies with them, about 15,000, all who were left of the army of the people of the east, for 120,000 men who drew the sword had fallen. Wow. Then Gideon went up by the road of those who dwell in tents on the east of Nobah and Jogbehah, and he attacked the army while the camp felt secure. So they thought they were safe, and Gideon marches forward. When Zebah and Zalmunna fled, he pursued them, and he took the two kings of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and routed the whole army. And so, me and my numbers, 15,000. That is impressive. That's what they're chasing. So the 300 plus however many had joined from the other tribes, Ephraim jumps in on board, but chasing now just 15,000 because the host at the beginning of the battle, pre-pitcher, pre-trumpet, was 135,000. That's what it says there in verse 10. That means the Lord took out 120,000 of them. They fell by turning toward each other and putting the sword in. And that's just, I don't like seeing that many people die, even in battle, but how the Lord works is mind-boggling. So
and he's like, there's 7-8% left. You think you got it now?
Yeah, you can handle it, Gideon. And so Gideon attacks, and I love that is he's not hesitating. Let's chase him down. Let's attack. He's still in pursuit. He understood, hey, the work wasn't finished. There are still 15,000 remaining, and it's not that the Lord's arm was too short. He's like, you know what? I got 120,000 of them. I don't think I can do the whole 135. I don't. That's not where the Lord was. But often in the midst of the battle, in the midst of ministry, the Lord will shift how He is working, so that we're always dependent upon Him.
Right.
We don't get formulaic in the way we do things, and so that's what happens in this case. And Gideon's like, "Fine, we'll chase him down." And then it said he routed the whole army at the end of verse 12 there, and I love that. Well done, Gideon. He finished the job. God called him a man of valor, and men of valor work with persistence until the job is done, even when they're exhausted.
Right.
Keep pressing on.
And
so,
like we discussed earlier, just quite a departure from, what happened just a few generations back when they decided to, make compromises and let a lot of the Canaanites just kind of be and think that they could all dwell together.
Right.
And, we see the mess that they're in now, and it's just more evidence that anytime that we compromise God's word or God's command, even when we think it seems very reasonable in the moment, there's going to be a consequence to contend with down the road.
Yeah, for sure. And Gideon perhaps recalls that, as he goes back now. What is he, the fifth judge, if I remember correctly? So he's looking back at the four before him and the cycle, the wash, rinse, repeat cycle that we've been studying now for 7 episodes. And he's like, you know what? Let's squash this. Mm-hmm. And I think that was his intent and his effort in this moment. So, all right, continuing then with the story, verse 13 says, Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle from the ascent of Heres, and he caught a young man of the men of Succoth and interrogated him, grabbed him by the collar, said, you know what, FBI, let's have an interrogation. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 77 men. Now I'm impressed by that this young man was so up on the current times that when he was pressed to give a list of the names of the leaders of Succoth, he knew 77 names, right? Could you name 77 people in Washington, D.C.
No.
At the moment? I don't think I could either. I might get 4, right? Right? Maybe 6 if I could, on a good day. He's like, here, let me dictate for you. I got 77 names here. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So the story continues, 15. Then he came to the men of Succoth and said, Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand? That we should give bread to your weary men. And he took the elders of the city and the thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Succoth. And then it goes on to say, then he tore down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of that city, or the city.
I love taught the men of Succoth.
Yeah.
I love the choice of wording used here in the New King James. It reminds me a whole lot of the so-called lessons I was taught by my dad's belt.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Same kind of lessons.
Yeah. My mom and her bar of lava. As I thought about this, I'm like, I always, when I study, I try to put myself in the shoes of, and in this moment, I'm putting myself in the place of a man of Succoth or a man of Penuel. And I think probably what happened is they feared the potential in the enemy still.
Right.
They had a greater fear of the fleeing enemy than they had a respect for what the Lord was doing through Gideon. And that's a dangerous place to be, and something that we probably need to examine in our own lives to say, do I have a greater fear of my enemy, or do I have a stronger faith in what God is?
Fear of the retribution that could come.
Yeah, yeah. And so, these thorns and briars for the men of Succoth, that could have been the scourging, like your dad. Mm-hmm. I thought, because I don't know that I would want to hold thorns and briars and try to, scourge somebody else that maybe they had gloves that
right,
so they wouldn't get the thorns in their hands. But maybe they laid them down on the ground and they're like, "Give me your feet," and just drug them over the thorns and briars. I don't know. Ouch! Either way,
right.
It's gonna school's in session.
Yeah, that's right.
So he taught the men of Succoth because pain is often a good schoolmaster, an effective schoolmaster, let's say it that way. And then he goes on to Penuel, tears down the tower. We don't know specifically what that is all about. Could have been a tower of pagan worship, similar to like the Tower of Babel. Could have been a strong tower that they were hiding in, a measure of defense that they thought they could be protected in. Either way, Gideon wipes it out and then takes a stronger stand than he did with the men of Succoth, actually killing, it said, the men of the city, which would be the leadership. He doesn't kill all the men in the city. And that almost suggests that not only did they not give the army bread, they were standing in stronger support of the Midian army, would be my guess. And so we don't get a lot of detail there, but just reading some commentaries, taking some speculation, something was going on in a deeper way with the men of Penuel than the men of Succoth. And so the lesson is stronger there. So, and he said to Zeba and Zalmunna in verse 18, "What kind of men were they whom you killed at Tabor?" And so he's now interrogating them. And so they answered, "As you are, so were they. Each one resembled the son of a king." Then he said, "These were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you." And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise, kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. And so Zeba and Zalmunna said, "Rise yourself and kill us, for as a man is, so is his strength." So Gideon arose and killed Zeba and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments that were on their camels' necks. And so through this interrogation, we don't know exactly how this all came to be, but we find out that Zeba and Zalmunna were responsible for deaths in Gideon's family, specifically his brothers. And so he is, in this moment, literally taking the position of the avenger of blood, which is a measure of judgment, or a measure of justification that God permitted through the law. You can read and through the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, to get more information about the avenger of blood. Just go to blueletterbible.com and search that term if you want to learn more about that. But so evidently when the Midianites were driving people into the caves and into hiding, these 2 kings killed part of Gideon's family. And I don't think I don't think in Gideon's heart this was a measure of revenge, or that it was revenge that motivated him. I believe it was the Lord that motivated him to do these things. But part of what God is accomplishing is a measure of judgment because of this heinous act that came against Gideon's family. So they don't deny it. The kings, Zeba and Zalmunna, are like, they're not trying to say, no, we never, I don't know who you're talking about. They're like, they readily described whom they murdered. And that's like, yeah, those are my brothers.
Come to think of it, they kind of looked like you.
Yeah, exactly. And so Jether, Gideon's son, he's like, all right, wipe these guys out. But he's not ready for the task. It tells us, he's still a youth. So Gideon doesn't force him into it, doesn't press him into it.
I get this image kind of you sending your son Kindu over, to tell me that I said something wrong during the podcast, got a little sideways, and I need dealt with.
Right.
Like, go get your dad.
And that's kind of what, that's kind of their response. But I think it's still a lesson for Jether in this moment to say, hey, this is how judgment is exacted. School's always in session. That's something we always said. We homeschooled our kids for a lot of years, and even though we would have breaks, school, we'd always find opportunities to teach a lesson. And so school was in session in this case. And then one last note on this little section is he said they took the crescent ornaments that were on the camels' necks there at the end of verse 21. And that tells us where the Midianites were as far as worship goes. They were worshiping a pagan god, and pagan worship often involved worship of a moon god, the crescent moon, as it were. There's all, if you can search the different cultures and the different names of the moon god. I think of the Romans was Luna. That's where we get the word lunar from. But it's interesting to note, kind of in the same region, Mesopotamia's moon god, his name was Sin, which is quite appropriate.
Yeah, not a passing coincidence whatsoever.
No.
And again, going back to Gideon and backed by God in this army doing what the Israelites didn't do in the first place.
Right.
And they had compromised back then and allowed the paganism to dwell in amongst them and beside them. And it just is a reminder and a lesson to me that we really have to be careful of things that we think are just simple symbols. These are just little crescents hanging around a camel's neck. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But they were a big deal to the people engaged in it, and they were a big deal to a jealous God that loves every one of us and wants us to pursue him.
Yeah.
And so we can't go in with these things, whether they decorate our houses, whether they're on our tattoos or on a chain around our neck, and think they're harmless and don't mean anything. We need to reject the pagan. And something, as I was reading through this, that came to mind is when Tiffany and I first got married. We got married in our mid-40s, and so we both had a lot of life behind us. And we had a little bit of communication issue in that she had this really adorable tendency, so cute, tendency, dear, that she would be talking about something and immediately shift gears and go right into another thing without any warning.
We have a saying for that. Michelle and I do.
Yeah.
I always say, hey, could you turn your blinker on next time?
Right. And I would be like, what? Wait. Or she would come home and say, oh, that didn't happen. This didn't happen. I'm like, yeah. And she would catch herself and laugh, and she'd say, you didn't read my mind? What? Is the crystal ball broke? So that was our thing, rather than, the use your blinker was your crystal ball broke. So our first Christmas, I opened my stocking, there's a crystal ball.
Oh.
So it's just this little joke between us. Right. And so it sat on a shelf for a little while. And I got convicted about it. Because crystal balls are used in divining. They are used in witchcraft. They are used in paganism.
Yeah.
They are used in a lot of the Wicca, things that are very much against God.
Yeah.
And while that glass object had no hold on me, the very fact that it was in my house, I couldn't treat it as no big deal.
Yeah.
So we got rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's my hope that whether they're physical or figurative, that I can allow that conviction to come, and just like these men of Gideon did, when they took the symbols, get rid of it, drive it out, don't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's neat how as we grow in the Lord, and continue to walk in his ways, how in his refining process, how that changes, how over the course of our lives, and as he is conforming us to his character, the things that will end up convicting us to make a correction. I told Michelle a story, and we're totally rabbit trailing here, but this doesn't have anything to do.
You get this for free
per se with the text, but I was on the road this week and stopped at a Love's. I love Love's truck stops. I don't know why. They have the best hot dogs, I guess, is probably what it boils down to. And this was down south of Columbus. I was headed to Cincinnati to pick something up on Monday, and grabbed a couple hot dogs, a couple other things. They have U-scans now in those.
Yeah.
And so I was scanning my stuff, and my Andy's fries rang up twice. It was lagging for some reason, and so I clicked it through once and it didn't show up, so I ran it through again, and then it showed up twice. I'm like, oh great. So I had to get somebody. I'm trying to do this by myself, and somebody came over, and they moving real fast,
right,
and deleted it and hit the end purchase and sent me on my way. And I paid and I got back to my truck, and I'm like, never put in my hot dogs.
Oh.
So I'm like, well, cool. I got some free hot dogs, and I'm like, and I just kept going, went down to Cincinnati, came back up through, and like 5 miles from where this Love's truck stop is, I was like, I could use a cup of coffee. And I had this hankering for a cup of coffee that would not quit. And so I'm like, well, I know Love's is right here. Pulled over, went in, got myself a cup of coffee, went up to the cash register, and tried to go to the U-scan. And I was like, I'm just going to ring up 2 hot dogs. Yeah. Because that was the conviction that was coming. And turns out that, this girl was like, hey, I can help you over here. And I'm like, okay. So now I get to tell somebody about the story.
Yeah.
I said, I was here about 2 hours ago, and this is what happened. And I walked out with a couple of hot dogs that I didn't pay for. And so now I'm coming back, and you need to add 2 hot dogs to my cup of coffee. And she looked at me like I had a third eye.
Right.
She's like, what? And I'm like, I know you wouldn't understand, but this is a conviction that I had. And I feel like after walking, with the Lord for 30 years, it's now come down to, I can't even get 2 free hot dogs,
Yeah,
So,
it's compromise. We can't let it in.
Right. And I didn't, it wasn't a matter of shame or anything like that. I just wanted to honor the Lord by doing that. And so made the correction. And so, and I think that's where Gideon is at in this moment, is he's like, he's so on fire for the Lord, and he's so close to what God is doing in this moment. He's like, yeah, we're going to wipe out this paganism. We're going to remove all the symbols of it as well.
Yes.
And so it's a good thing. So, okay. So verse 22, right, is where we are. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, both you and your son and your grandson also. Let's make this an empire, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. I love the answer here. Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, nor shall my son rule over you. The Lord shall rule over you. So eventually, we'll get to the end of the book of Judges, and Samuel, the last judge, is going to lead the nation in nominating or finding their first and second king in Saul and David. But that's still we're still 300 years from that. The book of Judges covers a long period of time. But even here in Judges chapter 8, you can see the people already want that. They want to be like the nations around them. We want to have a king. And Gideon's like, no, the Lord is your king. And I love that. In order to honor God, even in our leadership, as a pastor of a church, I must always stop short of sovereignty. Yes, I have the ability to make decisions for the church. Yes, I have the leadership to say this is the way we're going to go. But God is our ultimate leader, and I'm submitted to Him. He has the sovereignty, and that's where Gideon's at in this moment. So then Gideon said to them, I would like to make a request of you. So now that the battle's over, that each of you would give me the earrings from his plunder, for they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. And so evidently it was common or custom that all of the people would wear earrings in the Ishmaelite culture.
My grandfather's name is Ishmael. So that's why I've got one.
Oh, well, right on. So I always did it for the whole bondservant thing.
Yeah.
But and actually, the earrings in this culture were their coins, essentially. They would use it as money.
Okay.
So he's asking essentially for some money. So they answered, grandfather was Ishmael.
Seriously, he was.
Really?
Yes, that's the honest to goodness truth.
So I didn't have that on my bingo card.
No, me being an Ishmaelite.
Right. So they answered and said, "We will gladly give them." And they spread out a garment. Each man threw into it the earrings from his plunder. Verse 26, now the weight of the gold earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside the crescent ornaments, pendants, and purple robes which were on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were around the camel's neck. And so I see that number, 1,700 shekels of gold, and me and my fascination for numbers, like, all right, let's do some math.
Yeah.
So 1,700 shekels of gold. I looked up the weight of a shekel of gold is 0.4 ounces.
Okay.
And there was a couple different reports, and I went with 0.4. So 1,700 times 0.4 ounces is 683 ounces of gold. Divide that by 16 ounces per pound, right? You have 42.75 pounds of gold in this sheet that they laid down for Gideon to gather. Take it into today's time and what gold is worth today. As of 8/27/25, gold was at $3,411.60 per ounce. Or, if you got a brick of gold laying around that weighs a pound, yesterday it was worth $54,585.60. Take that times the 42.75 pounds of earrings that Gideon has, and he brings in today's money $2,333,534.40.
Wow.
That's a pretty nice payday.
It's not bad.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, Major League Baseball pitcher pay, right? It's crazy when you break it down to what they make per game.
Oh.
It's just insane. But he does pretty well for himself in this moment, and so he's like, all right, this is I could retire on this. So I did some number crunching, and I figured out that I'm going to be able to retire at about 97 and enjoy life for about 11 minutes before I run out of money. So and that's about what I've got.
I'm pulling for you.
So, all right, we'll finish up the chapter. So it says, then Gideon made it into an ephod, and he set it up in the city of Ophrah, and all Israel played the harlot with it there. It became a snare to Gideon and to his house. And at this point, I'm like, what happened? What in the world is going on here, Gideon?
He took the objects, but he didn't get rid of them.
And that very well could be, yeah. You almost see a shift in his heart in this moment. Yeah. Now that the battle is over, and sometimes life is, it's easier to honor God in the heat of the battle than it is to honor him in the simplicity of life. We only have this one verse for context, so I don't know why he made this ephod, and we have no real way of judging what his heart was in this moment, but it doesn't go well. No matter what his motive was, the outcome isn't good, because all Israel played the harlot. God likens our relationship to him as to a marriage. We are his bride. He is the groom. So to chase after false gods, to chase after idols, or to make idols of things created, is to play the harlot. You're chasing after impurity, essentially. The ephod just in case anybody watching isn't aware, was a part of the vestige of a priest. It was what they would wear on their chest as they were ministering to the Lord. And so some people would think, as you read through the commentaries, that Gideon made this golden ephod kind of as an insult to Ephraim, because of what Ephraim said earlier in the chapter. He's doing this to kind of jab back at them. They didn't help him in the battle. He didn't invite them to. But at this time, the tabernacle of the Lord was in Shiloh, which is in Ephraim. And so some would say that he made this ephod maybe to play the role of a priest as well. Hard to say specifically. So he was of the tribe of Manasseh, so it wouldn't be right for him to play the role of a priest. That's reserved for the Levites. So we really can't say for certainty what was happening in this. But what we can say is what happened was not God-honoring, because all of Israel played the harlot. It seems like the people of Israel have a thing for worshiping earrings or something, see also Aaron and, at the foot of Mount Sinai.
Right.
So, yeah, just crazy. So the story ends. Thus Midian was subdued before the children of Israel, so that they lifted their heads no more. And the country was quiet for 40 years in the days of Gideon. Then Jerubbaal, Gideon, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. Gideon had 70 sons, who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And I want to take a moment here to say it's important for us as we study the Bible to discern what parts of the Bible are prescriptive, telling us to do something, prescribing something, and what parts of the Bible are descriptive, telling us about something that happened. This is one of those descriptive times. Gideon had many wives. So if our relationship with God is like a marriage, what does it say if a person, a leader especially, is married to many different wives? And I would say it's not honoring to God. And so this isn't something that the scripture is prescribing. It's something that it's describing as it not being good of Gideon.
Yeah.
He's making a poor choice here. And then it goes on to say, and his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, whose name he called Abimelech. Now Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash his father in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. So it was, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again played the harlot with the Baals and made Baal-berith their god. Thus the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies on every side, nor did they show kindness to the house of Jerubbaal in accordance with the good he had done for Israel. And so this, ends the story of Gideon, the end of this, the fifth judge. And because this is the end of our seventh episode now, I want to do something a little different. Now that we've got a few minutes left, as we look at the end of Gideon's life, he kind of drops the ball. He does well in the heat of the battle, but then after the battle's over, it seems things kind of fall apart. He doesn't finish well.
Yeah,
and it's sad. It kind of breaks my heart. He creates this ephod that ends up getting worship. He ends up with many wives, and the law would say in Deuteronomy 17, don't multiply horses. Speaking of the leader in Israel, verse 17 of Deuteronomy 17, neither shall he multiply wives for himself, lest his heart turn away. And so specifically, the law would say, don't do this.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he's got a concubine, which is not even a woman that he would marry, but just would use, essentially. And in Proverbs, it would say, that you would always rejoice with the wife of your youth, as a loving deer and a graceful doe. Let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be enraptured with your wife. Always be enraptured with her love. For why should you, my son, be enraptured by an immoral woman and be embraced in the arms of a seductress? And so that's, just wisdom, that why would Gideon finish this way? He ends up having a son with his concubine, then names him Abimelech, who, if you translate that name, it means father king. Abba, the beginning of Abimelech, and Melech means king, and so it's father king, or my dad is king, is his name. So what did he say back in 8:23? The Lord shall rule over you. And now, however much time has transpired, now he's naming his son, my dad's king. And it's just like the hypocrisy is what it boils down to. Yeah. And so with that as our backdrop, and what I want to kind of have a conversation to close out this episode, we've recently lost, John MacArthur, James Dobson, a guy named Chuck Garrard, who was one of the guys in Love Song, which was the band involved with Calvary Chapel. They all passed away recently. And I would say all of those men finished well. Chuck Smith, when he passed, he finished well. Dave Brown, my pastor, he finished well. So let's have a discussion to close. And let me start by asking you what you think. How do we finish well?
It's keeping the main thing. And as we go through life, as we get older, there is that weariness that can creep in. We get to a place sometimes we've kind of seen it all, right? And sometimes rather than let the Lord lead, let him remain in the fight, so to speak, and relying upon him, as we talked about earlier, even in that weariness, we get to where we want to rubber stamp or hit a template for things, and let's solve it fast. Yeah. I think especially with men, we're problem solvers. So we've seen this before. We've been through this again.
This is how we fix it.
This is how we fix it.
Yeah.
And not only with things around the house, but we can get to that place, spiritually speaking.
Yeah.
When we come up against things. Also, I wonder, Gideon, he started out fine, but I wonder if he got a little bit of taste of that, those accolades. We want you to be king. And then they willingly give him this stuff. He gets that little bit of taste, and we can see that happen too. You get some pats on the back, you get some accolades, you get people pumping you up a little bit. You kind of start buying into your own hype a little bit.
Yeah.
I know that's something I need to guard against. And I think that's what happens too often when we don't finish well. We hit overdrive and coast. And these men you mentioned, and going back when we read through Hebrews in the Hall of Faith, even those guys that made mistakes, back to that idea that even in the weariness, you do the work.
Yeah.
Even in the weariness, you find a way to rest in the Lord and draw that strength from him.
Yeah.
And very ironically, the more knowledge, the more experience we gain, the tougher it is to do.
Right. I was thinking of saying that Joe Foch, one of the pastors I love listening to, Calvary Chapel, Philadelphia, I've heard him say many times is yesterday's portion of the Holy Spirit isn't sufficient for the work today. And a lot of times we, in our habit or in our rubber stamping things, we don't even seek to be refilled. And in that, the slow drift can happen. And, if we're off by 1 degree today and then 1 degree tomorrow and 1 degree after that, come the end of the month or in the next month, we're off by several degrees. And so it's a constant recorrection or a constant dependence upon the Lord in order to be able to finish well. And that's something I know you and I are both Gen Xers.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is we have more life behind us than we have ahead of us. And it's something I think about more often now. Is I want to finish well. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people listening or watching that probably have that thought too. And so as we look at these guys, Chuck Smith and James McDonald and James Dobson, right?
Yeah.
John McDonald, or why am I blanking on his name? Goodness.
John MacArthur.
John MacArthur, thank you. That's who I'm trying to think of. James McDonald is in Chicago. He's still alive and well as far as I know. So, but they created a model for us to say, it's possible. And so let's do everything to ensure that day by day we continue to walk in His grace and mercy, so that when it comes time, we leave a legacy that is God honoring behind, and we will be able to say that we have in fact finished well.
I know I have to remind myself often that ministry is an eternal call. And while we might be able to retire from a post or a particular task, we don't retire from the work of the ministry.
Amen. Yeah.
Jesus didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't get out of it with death and resurrection.
Yeah. He still sits at the right hand of the Father and intercedes on our behalf. He's still in the ministry, as it were. That's good.
Once we get called home, we'll be ministering to Him, worshiping.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And I love that, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. I've fallen short hundreds of times. I'm sure you have as well.
Today.
And the beautiful thing is that God's grace and mercy are ever present and willing to cover those things. And in fact, we see that even in Gideon's life. You go to Hebrews chapter 11 and the Hall of Faith, and it says in verse 32, "And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, and of David and of Samuel and the prophets." So Gideon is mentioned in the Hall of Faith. It says, "Who through faith subdued kingdoms and worked righteousness and obtained promises." And so there's no mention of the failures he had even at the end of his life.
Right.
What's recalled is that he was faithful when God called him in that moment. And there's grace, and the Lord's grace and mercy covers even his mistakes at the end. But I thought it was an interesting launching point, I think, for us to just to have a discussion to say, you know what, Gideon probably, I love that the Bible, there are no human heroes in the Bible. Right. We get to see the warts and the scars and the shortcomings of every person that does well for the Lord and has their shortcomings. David was a man after God's own heart, and yet there's Bathsheba in his life. Right. And Gideon was the sword of the Lord and for Gideon, and yet he's building this golden ephod and having many wives and 70 sons. And in fact, as we get into the next chapter, the son of his concubine is the guy that's going to try to take the leadership, Abimelech. And so it's just like, he didn't finish well. But for you and I, as we study these things, now we have an opportunity to examine our hearts and to say, okay, I don't want to go that way. So Lord, keep me close to you. Fill me with your Spirit day by day so that I can finish well.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and speaking of finishing,
we're over a little bit, aren't we?
That's fine. Yep. That's fine. But we will wrap up this episode and look forward to next week. We want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. And if you'd like to know more about the church, our service times, our location, along with a library of sermons and more, you can visit church860.com on your desktop, laptop, or pocket Googling machine of your choice. You'll also find email links. You can send a note if you have a specific prayer need or more questions about any of the teachings. The podcast is produced by the wonderful Lisa Davis that asked me not to mention her name, but I shall. Here at Never Ending Studios in Columbus, Ohio. Normally, I'm going to say, until next time, I'm Rob Chandler. And you would say...
And I'm Khris Rogers.
But I think tonight we're going to say, go out and work on finishing well.
Amen. Amen. Love you guys. God bless.